number 1150, Prohibition against smoking. And actually, I'll talk about policy 4116, alcohol, tobacco, and drug-free workplace as well, just because there were some similarities between the two policies, and it's just like a matter of being consistent. So I will mention both of them. So first, I'll see if anybody wants to say anything about it, and then I'll.
Well, I do have a question. I noticed in 4116, it does address all tobacco product use, not just smoking. But in 1150, it does not address other tobacco product use, such as chewing tobacco. Is that addressed anywhere else in any other policy that I'm not aware of?
I don't know. I mean, the difference between these two policies, first of all, is that 1150 is under community school relations and 4116 is under personnel. Mm-hmm. That's the first thing. Mm-hmm. But I didn't actually notice that.
Yeah, everything.
I'm sorry, what, can you reread what part of it that you just read?
What line is that you're referring to?
Okay, so in 4116, lines 37 through 38 address tobacco, all tobacco product use, not just related to smoking of tobacco products or cannabis, those sorts of things. But in 1150, I didn't see any mention of anything outside of tobacco product that was smoked. So I was wondering if there's a provision for smokeless tobacco.
Well, I'm not sure. Are you looking at the new 4116?
Yes.
Okay. So lines 36 to 39, it says prohibits smoking, including smoking using an electronic nicotine delivery system, electronic cannabis delivery system, or vapor product, and the use of tobacco products. So I don't know what tobacco products in that. It doesn't say a particular definition of tobacco products. Right. A tobacco product would be anything that you smoke or chew, or I don't know what else you would do with it.
Right, and that's in 4116, correct? That we're talking about. Right, and that's what I was noting.
Chewing tobacco is mentioned in 5090.7 for students. That's the it's also on our list tonight: drugs, alcohol, tobacco, inhalants, and performance enhancing substances. I think the 1150 is to address the smoking prohibition. Okay. Like it's a specific law related to smoking, but we do ban chewing tobacco, which, you know, from time to time can come up in a different policy.
Right. And I guess that's where I was a little bit confused too, because I saw in that policy, I guess, the current policy 5090.7, that chewing tobacco was addressed, but in the new policy, I didn't note it in the new policy specifically as chewing tobacco. Again, it seemed like everything was focused around smoking in the new version of 5090.7.
All right, let's come back to that.
Okay.
So let's start with 1150. We'll kind of put that on the back burner and revisit it in a minute. So one of the things that my question was about was, if you look at policy 1150 and look at lines 25 to 29, and then you look at policy 4116 and you look at lines 65 to 69. Those are essentially, right, the same thing. But there's just like a slight, hang on, where is it? Give me 1 second. Mm-hmm. All right, so those are exactly the same, but when you look at the other lines, like lines 40 to 44, policy 1150, it talks about the real property. Mm-hmm. The board further prohibits smoking, including smoking using an electronic nicotine delivery system, e.g. e-cigarettes, then they added an electronic cannabis delivery system or vapor product on the real property of any administrative office building. And then it gives a definition of real property. Real property means the land and all temporary and permanent structures comprising the district's administrative office buildings. It includes, but is not limited to, storage facilities and parking lots. And then my question regarding this is whether or not in policy 4116, if you look at lines 70 to 72, it talks about school property. And it says, means any land and all temporary and permanent structures comprising the district's school and administrative office buildings, and includes, but is not limited to, classrooms, hallways, storage facilities, theaters, gymnasiums, fields, and parking lots. And I'm just kind of wondering why it's so differently phrased. I don't know if that was just like because they were developed 2 different times, or if they should really be more in sync with each other. Any thoughts, Dr. Cook?
I think they both get to what we're trying to get to. I mean, I understand, yeah, they are different. They don't have that same definition. Might have been written by 2 different attorneys, but I think they still both would accomplish what we need them to.
So you don't think it's important to have them be more similar? Because like one says real property and one says school property. And then, you know, the examples and everything is different. I don't know if it's important or if we should actually try to get them to be a little bit closer to each other. It just, it kind of struck me as a little odd that one says real property and one says school property, and then they're different examples. So
if it helps at all, when I make all these changes, believe it or not, I do read these policies so I can try to comprehend what they're doing. And my interpretation of it was that 1150, they're in policy 1150, they're talking to one audience, which is the difference. And in 4116, they're talking to a different audience. And that may seem very obvious, but that was how I read it. I thought, oh, okay, they're talking about real property, temporary and permanent structures, including the district's administrative office buildings, because more than likely, a person of the general public, a member of the general public, would be going to that building as opposed to, say, someone else. So I don't know if those 2 cents help out or not.
I see what you're saying, but I feel like, you know, usually when a community member would come into the schools and you would want to regulate their smoking or whatever, I feel like they're more often in the school themselves than in a, you know, a storage facility. So I kind of feel like, I mean, I don't know that you actually need to have all the specifics of hallways, classrooms, theaters, gymnasiums, but, you know, perhaps in the personnel, it says fields and parking lots. I think it would be probably a good thing to include fields under community school relations. Maybe we could just sort of even that out to things that are, you know, more likely. I don't know. I just don't like that there's such a big discrepancy. It's kind of nitpicking, but. Any other comments?
I don't know that it's nitpicking, Diane, because, and I should also mention that Maureen is trying to get on and she's having technical difficulties. I don't know if she's on, Wendy.
She
needs
is.
to be promoted.
I'm just promoting her right now. She should be
Okay,
here in just
thanks.
a moment. There she is.
Hi, Maureen.
Hi, Maureen.
Sometimes when you're being promoted, it takes like a 17 seconds or something. It's a really long. Hi, Maureen. You're on mute.
Hello, everybody. I've been here for a little bit, but I couldn't actually join, but I'm here now. So nice to see you all.
Okay, hi.
Hi there.
So we're still talking about the first one, 1150. Go ahead, Seth.
Yeah, sorry. And I was just saying, Diane, I don't think it's necessarily nitpicking to have them be more consistent, because I think the reason why the definition is a bit more inclusive to include like surrounding grounds for the teachers and staff is because, you know, we're trying to have them set a positive example for the students. And if they're all hanging out, you know, smoking in the parking lot, like they used to do in the teacher's lounge when we were kids, you know, it's not really discouraging the kids from doing it. But at the same time, I think it ought to be explicit to the students to give them fair warning that if they get busted in the parking lot smoking or doing drugs or something, that, you know, they're also going to be held liable under the conduct code.
Mhm.
Do we know, is there any real difference between the use of the term real property under community school relations versus school property under personnel?
I think real property is anything that the school community owns, right? As opposed to just buildings or. So that would include like, you know, we have behind the high school, we built these really nice storage units. You know, if teachers are hanging out back there smoking, then that's also part of our real property. It's on the property that's owned by the school.
All right, so the term real property is used in 1150, which is community school relations, and then 4116 personnel is where it uses school property. So do we want to make it the same in both? Do we want to sort of equalize these out, or are we okay?
I think that'd be good to use school property throughout. I don't think that changes anything. It used to be in the other policy, but I also like the idea of adding athletic facilities, because for us in particular, we have a very separate athletic facility that you know, we want to make clear that counts as well.
All right, so then if we look at 1150, line 42, we'll change real property to be school property. And then when it says means the land and all temporary and permanent. All right, so personnel on line 70, it says means any land. This one says means the land. Does that make a difference? Any to the Seth?
What's the rest of what's the context,
Okay.
the rest of the?
So the line in 1150 says school, we're changing real property to school. So school property means the land and all temporary and permanent structures comprising the district's administrative office buildings and includes, but is not limited to, storage facilities and parking lots. But under the personnel, it says school property means any land and all temporary and permanent structures comprising the district's school and administrative office buildings and includes, but is not limited to, classrooms, hallways, storage facilities, theaters, gymnasiums, fields, and parking lots. So should we just take the one that lists more things and kind of put it in the, okay.
I think we should, yeah, we should err in favor of taking the longer list and putting that in both.
All right, so that's what we'll amend it that way to make it the same, using the more detailed one into 1150.
Yes, great.
All right,
Got
and
that, Wendy,
then
right? Wendy, you
What's
picked
that?
up on that?
Yes, I'm taking
Great,
notes
thank
as you're talking.
Great, thank you.
No
Thank you.
problem.
I'll follow up with you anyway, Wendy.
Okay.
Okay, and then on line 34 and 1150, this is just a very small thing. It says vapor product shall mean any product, and I just think on line 80, under personnel, vapor product, we should add the word shall. It'll be the same. Shall mean. We go with that.
Yeah.
Agreed.
All right, I think that's it for that I had for 1150 and 4116. Oh, I remember what I was going to say before. If you look at 1150 lines 31 and 32, where it says the definition of the school-sponsored activity shall mean blah, blah, blah. In 4116, line 31 to 32, it talks about school-sponsored activity, but it doesn't actually define it. And I didn't know if that was an oversight or if it should be included or if it's fine without it.
So is school activity specifically defined in the contract, the collective bargaining agreement? If it is, then we should leave it out here because.
Oh, I'm sorry. No, I found it. I'm sorry. It's line 74 and 75. It is there. It's just later. My apologies.
Okay.
It's there. We're good. Sorry.
Oh, yeah.
All right, so those are just the things that I found in 1150 and 4116. Otherwise, the other changes, as we all read in our policy notes, had to do with, find my notes, had to do with defining the revision, the law that revised the definition of smoke and smoking. It clarified the prohibition on smoking that extends to any area of a school building and extends the prohibition against using an electronic nicotine delivery system or vapor product on school grounds or in a school, to also prohibit use of an electronic cannabis delivery system in the same locations. And then 4116 that we were just talking about, again, it was the same definitions that had to be changed. And then Shipman and Goodwin said they further revised the policy to clarify that while Connecticut law allows for the legal use of marijuana under certain circumstances, because it is still prohibited under federal law, the use of it at work or outside of work, if it impairs an employee's ability to perform their job, constitutes a violation of this policy. So those are the only notes I had for those two policies, 1150 and 4116. Does anyone have any other comments or things that they wanted to discuss regarding them?
So basically, if a student has some kind of a condition where they're on medical marijuana, but they're using, say, a tincture rather than a tobacco form.
But we're not doing a student policy right now. This is community
Okay.
school relations and personnel. We'll get to that in a bit
Okay.
with under students. So if no one else has anything about 1150 and 4116, then with the changes that we talked about, I would like to recommend that we move it to the full board for adoption. So do we want to just make a motion and vote on that now? We'll do them one at a time. Or no, should we just do it at the end? What's better? Do it at the end?
We may not get all the way to the end today.
Oh,
because
we're
there's
getting
so
to the
much.
end.
Well, I actually have to leave at 6:15 or 6:20 because I have a commitment outside of school that I need, or outside of school, outside of this meeting that I need to
All right.
travel to. So unfortunately, I can't be. And of course, all the good stuff I want to deal with is down at the bottom of the docket. But
Well, we'll go
but
fast.
we should still go through one by one, I think. And I know I don't have a
All
vote.
right, we can
But
vote at the end because you don't vote anyway.
yeah.
right.
Okay.
All right, so then we're going to move on to 5090.7. And I sent you guys all the question that I had asked that Wendy sent on to Shipman and Goodwin. Did you get that, Craig? You did, right?
Yes.
Because I just had a question about, I don't remember what my question was. Oh, about why inhalants and steroids were not included in this policy, and that's because they're in other policies. So we have that. Okay, so 5090.7 is drug and alcohol use by students. Did anyone want to comment on it?
Well, again, my only thing is 5090.7. The current policy, again, addresses tobacco use in varying forms, but the new policy does not.
All right.
That's the biggest thing that caught my eye in between what we currently operate under versus what the new suggestions were, is that it seems to me there's been even though, it says formerly drugs, alcohol, tobacco, inhalants, performance enhancing substances, when you look at what's listed out in the new policy, it doesn't seem to include anything regarding tobacco use of varying consistencies.
I don't have an answer for that.
Yeah, and I apologize. I can't find my proposed policy. I just have the current.
So
Oh.
just,
So it says new, right?
just,
Yeah.
so
It comes
Shipman's
first.
policy, the title of Shipman's policies is drug and alcohol use by students. So it doesn't, their policy does not address tobacco. The other thing too is the existing policy is a policy from when we utilized CABE's policy services, and CABE's policies were much different than Shipman's. They might have been overkill to an extent. Shipman tends to generalize things more. It seems like their policies, because I talk with them so much about policy, it seems like a lot of their terms are, for lack of a better term, an umbrella term. You know, they're speaking as lawyers, so they when they refer to something, they refer to it as being all encompassing, if that makes sense. But I just wanted to point out that the title of their policy is different than the title of the existing policy. It doesn't indicate tobacco in the title of the policy.
Right. No, I see that it doesn't indicate it, but it does allude that it's replacing the other just by the fact that it's in parentheses, formerly drugs, alcohol, tobacco, inhalants, and performing enhancing substances.
Right.
I mean, it technically wouldn't fall under their definitions because, it's talking about controlled drugs, controlled substances, and drug paraphernalia. And so it doesn't really fall under any of those things.
Right. So do we have another policy then that does address tobacco use by students?
I think this one was it.
So.
Yeah, and
So
I can
then-
see Jen's point. If this is
Yeah,
all
that's
we
a big
have,
omission.
we might want to be more, we might want to be more clear.
So then I think that we need to go back through this and maybe put in another section that goes back to our old policy regarding the tobacco.
I agree, and or ask Shipman where else is there another policy that we just haven't
Yeah.
adopted yet, but make sure we're
Right.
adopting them at the same time.
Okay, so then this one, and because also I had asked about the inhalants. And
Mhm.
because I mean, the whippets.
Right.
But
And solvents.
right.
Yeah.
So, all right, so let's see if we can get an answer from Shipman and Goodwin about their tobacco policy, if they have one, and how it should be put back in with this one. And so we will set this one aside for tonight. How's that sound?
Good.
Is there a time, sort of a timely thing that we need to do on that one? Remember, Wendy, you said you added some in because we needed to get them passed.
I don't think that this policy references any dates. I'm looking
Okay.
through it right now.
I didn't see any when I did a quick run through, but
Oh, it does talk about on or after January 1st.
Yeah.
The student shall not face greater discipline or sanction for this use, sale, or possession of marijuana. But
well, we don't have a
Shipman's very
choice.
good about answering very quickly. So I will email them first thing in the morning.
All right, well, just, I had sent this to Dr. Cook and Seth, but I didn't send it to our committee. But just as a quick review, anything that we're doing tonight, the policies that we're reviewing, it will go to the Board of Ed meeting for the first read on March 1st, which means that it'll have its second read, not on March 15th, because that's a workshop. So it won't have a second read until April 5th. Right? So
Correct.
that definitely, with this one being pushed off, then it won't actually go for a second read until May. So just to keep that in mind for whatever we don't finish tonight, it puts it off by over a month. But these will be subjected to the two read and then adoption versus the 3. Because on April 5th, hopefully the 9600 series will be adopted, and then those will be done first. Then anything after that would be a second read and action. All right. So let's go to 5113. All right. I loved 5113 because it was very easy and fast. They were just legal reference additions and changes, nothing of substance. It was very short, but it's the 5113R that is longer. So does anyone want to say anything about 5113 student attendance, truancy, and chronic absenteeism, formerly student attendance?
No.
It was literally just the legal reference additions and changes. So then I would recommend that we move that on to the Board of Ed, and we'll vote on that at the end.
Mhm.
All right. That one there. That brings us to 5113R. So I have a question though. So 5113R is not actually listed under policies to update. Wendy, does it have to be? Like, do we have
It's
to add
not
that
a-
in?
Yeah, it's not a policy. It's an administrative reg, which Shipman
That's what I
uses.
see.
Madison does not do many administrative regs. Administrative regs are issued by the superintendent, but they must be in alignment with a policy. So they don't stand alone. It's really about the implementation of the policy. So what would happen is we'd bring it before the policy committee, have discussion there, but does not require a vote of the board. It would not be issued until the policy's in place. So
Okay.
it's something I just send out once it's completed.
Okay. So the only thing that I noticed about this one was that it was a little inconsistent with a few of the terms, and and to be picky, some formatting errors. But so I noticed that wherever there was the word child, it was started to change it to the word student, but it wasn't consistent throughout the document. So I would say that wherever it says child, to make it student. So I noticed, if, for example, if you look at line 27, you'll see that child is crossed out and it says student replaced there. But if you look on line 109, it says parents or other persons having control of the child. So I would recommend that wherever it says child, we cross it off and say student. And it goes throughout the document. I think you can just do a search and replace for most of it. I think there's only one instance in the document where you would actually want to keep the word child because it's referring to the difference between child and adult. And then let's see what else. The other changes were mostly, you know, changing his or her to the student, or what else? Just some, I noticed there were a couple of numbering errors. Line 92 should be, because 6 and 7 were added in lines 82 to 90, that line 92 should be then number 8, line 94 should be 9, line 98 should be 10.
No problem with that, Diane. Once the policy is approved and I go in and accept all those changes, then the whole document gets reformatted.
Okay. So there are a couple other instances where there's quite a few where child should be changed to student. So, and I can go over that with you as long as everyone's amenable to that change. So the only other thing I really wanted to discuss about this particular one was lines 181 to 184. And that says, it's number 4, neither email nor text message shall serve to satisfy the requirement of written documentation. In rare and extraordinary circumstances, a building administrator may, in the administrator's own discretion, accept the delivery of written documentation through a scanned copy sent by email. So this is referring, of course, to absence from school by a student, And I guess I'm just wondering about that particular part of it, because, for instance, my daughter was recently out, and I found that, you call the number, and I send an email to the nurse to let them know that, I'm going to get a note and send it to you, whatever. And then in my dealings with the nurse at hand, I've always I get the note from the doctor, I make a PDF of it, I email it to her, she's like, great, we're good, and everything is fine. But this, to me, sounds like that's not acceptable.
Yeah, and the other problem with that is I recently had a situation come up where we had to send something on behalf of our daughter, and it wasn't even in an email or a PDF or anything. It was sent through the My Charts thing, which is a new thing, and like you cannot convert those documents. It took us like 8 hours to figure out how to, like take a screenshot,
Yeah.
text it, and then text it to and then email your text or whatever. I mean, it's just,
Yeah.
so it's like
kinda
second or
crazy.
third hand.
I kind of look at the difference personally as being like, as a parent, if you just type up an email and send it, there's no signature or anything like that on there. Whereas if it's something that's coming from, say, a physician's office that's on letterhead, that it's coming through My Chart, there's no way for like a student to manipulate that, so to speak, by themselves. It's coming in yes, you as a parent are sending it, but it's coming from a more official source.
But when
You're
you
just
take a
including it in
screenshot
the
of it, it's not that. Like you lose all of the officiousness of it because you're taking a screenshot and passing it. And honestly, it even says electronically signed by Dr. So-and-so.
Right. Like half the time
know
it's
what I
not a
mean?
real signature. Most of the time the nurse gives it to you. And to be honest,
Right.
like the note that we just got from the dermatologist's office, it looks like, someone just made it on a Word file. It doesn't look very official at all, depending on where you get it from, what it
Right.
looks like. And it just seems like it would be more, it's easier and more efficient and paperless if, parents are allowed to take that official note from your doctor or whatever and scan it and send it to the nurse. And I think there'll be a lot less, I don't know, the room for error, like,
No,
oh, yeah.
I agree with that point entirely, that, we do so much stuff electronically. I just feel like attaching something like that as providing an attachment with an email is different than simply like drafting an email yourself and sending it. Because if somebody can log into your account, then anybody could send an email. But if you've got those official documents or, that you're
Right,
sending an
but
attachment,
the
it's a
lines
little.
181 to 184 specifically say neither email nor text message shall serve to satisfy the requirement of written documentation. In rare and extraordinary circumstances, a building administrator may, in the administrator's own discretion, accept the delivery of written documentation through a scanned copy sent by email. So I just feel like that whole statement needs to go.
So it's a little bit too restrictive, right? I mean, we're saying we would accept scanned copies.
I think it makes it easier for parents, for the nurse, and everything's
that's current
electronic.
practice. I mean, that's really current practice. I mean, many times there's ongoing conversation, so it's not a surprise. I think what the policy's kind of or the reg is trying to avoid is, the kid figuring out how to do a note that says, Seth's excused every Friday.
Yeah, and I agree. I think we're trying to avoid a scenario that turns the administration into super sleuths and tech, mavens. I think the better option is, and I think this goes a little bit more towards what both Diane and Jen are trying to kind of say, is it has to have the imprimatur of coming from the parent. You know what I mean? Like if the parent forwards it, maybe it can be presumed to be a legitimate doctor's note, no matter how the parent gets it into the administration.
Correct.
All right, so that was my one big thing. So can we just remove the 181 to 184? or
Can
change
we
it.
try and soften, can we try and come up with different language? Because I worry about going too far the other way that
Okay.
someone say, well, I sent you that email, you know, that,
Mhm.
or
Right.
something like that.
Well, we
But,
could get rid of in rare and extraordinary circumstances.
definitely. Yeah, I think that's ability
but-
administrator may in his
Another email or
discretion.
text message shall serve to satisfy the requirement. Or why don't we say neither email nor text message shall serve to, that's a mouthful, shall serve to satisfy the requirement of written documentation unless forwarded by a parent of the student or something, parent or guardian.
Or do we
like
want it to
verifying
reference-
email addresses and
do we want it to reference including like that will accept email communication if it includes attachments from approved
Medical
providers?
If you're okay, because we have that time, I could come up with some different language and even talk to the high school, middle school, make sure it's in alignment with what their practice is.
Okay.
Sure.
So, and that won't affect this the 513 the 5113. It won't affect it moving forward to the board.
Right. No, what I'll do is I'll just bring it back for another meeting since it's a reg.
Okay. Oh, that's
Yep.
good.
All right.
Okay.
So I have to excuse myself at this point.
Okay.
I had talked to Seth and Diane. Thanks, guys. I'll see you. Talk to you later.
All right,
All
cross
right.
fingers.
Bye.
Bye. Okay. All right, so let's set that aside for now.
Okay.
Oh man, it's 6:13. I'm not nearly as fast as I've been. We still have 4 to get through. Holy cow. All right, 5131.911. And that's a revision. So, I think this was mostly just statutory definition changes. I did notice, and again, Wendy, you'll catch this anyway. Line 38 should be actually number 1 instead of number 3 and on down, but I know you said that you'll catch that.
Yes.
The other big change was lines 102 to 107. That all has to do with general statutes. So this one is actually pretty easy as well. This is all about just you look at your notes, which I can't find mine. God, I am like so disorganized today. Okay, I got it. So yeah, so this was just the policy revision to conform with Public Act number 19-166 regarding bullying and safe school climate. And the law, which passed 2 years ago, recently went into effect July 1, 2021, with the law changes to the definitions of bullying and school climate, adds new statutory definitions, blah, blah, blah. So this is all about being compliant with statutes. I didn't see anything besides a numbering problem. So does anyone have any comments or questions regarding 5131.911?
Nope.
Yeah.
This one's been pretty clear cut for me.
Well, I mean, I know that there are state requirements here. So I guess from a purely technical perspective, you know, it looks like Shipman is just giving us the changes that will meet the state requirements. You know, so I guess we could look at it that way, but to me, it's like while we have the hood open, I see some issues. Can anyone tell me? It looks like the state, one of the things they did was to expand. Was it permissibly expand or was it require an additional designee to be the school climate officer for a school? Like, were they adding another one by mandate, or were they saying you could use someone other than like?
Are you talking about 5131.914?
Hang on.
Safe school climate policy.
Yes, exactly.
Right. So give me 1 second and we'll get there.
Thank you.
Yeah, 5131.911 was the shorter one about bullying prevention and intervention. And that was
Okay.
just, and just to point out also, like, I remember reading this because this was adopted April 6th, 2021. So it was very recently updated. And so this new revision had to do with just updating to current statutes that passed in the meantime. But if anyone has anything about 5131.911, now is the time. And then we can go to 914, Seth.
5131. These are so long, I'm having trouble.
That's why I
Right.
have them
This is-
printed out, because I can't do it on the computer.
I know,
and
I-
do Zoom,
exactly.
and it's hard. Right,
Yeah.
Maureen? We got the paper copies.
Unfortunately, this is the first time I didn't print it out. And I'm, yeah,
Well,
I'm
this is an
regretting it.
all-new meeting. Yeah.
I'm very much regretting it. It's tricky for me.
It is hard. I can't, even if I had another computer here, I wouldn't be able to. All right, so so I was fine with 5131.911. And I would recommend that we move it
Phew.
forward to the board. But I think what you want to talk about, Seth, was the 914. So let's do that one now. Unless anyone had anything else about 911. Okay.
Correct. Thank you.
All right, so we're at 5131.914, the safe school climate policy. And this was the chunky one with the current policy and the new policy. So I think to what you said, Seth, I believe that that is not new. When we adopted this, this was the same time in April 2021. That was already in there. So that's not new to this particular revision.
Okay.
Yeah, you're correct. So I'll just clarify it a little further. So our safe school climate policies or plans, I should say, we file them every November 1st with the Department of Emergency Management Services. And within that document, that very big document, close to 200 pages long for each school, there is a section that talks about the safe school plan or the safe school climate coordinator in each building or their designee. So the policy just mirrors exactly what it says in those individual plans. And it's said that those plans have indicated that ever since I've been in Madison and updating those plans. So that's 7 years now, if that helps.
Thank you, Wendy. That does help.
You're
Okay,
welcome.
so instead of, so if this safe school climate officer is, for example, the principal of a building.
Which most of the time
principal-
it is.
Yeah, it is usually. So the principal could assign someone else as a designee to do the reporting. Is basically all that means.
Right.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
The only thing that I found is just a minor word change. If you look at line 129, again, it's to be consistent with the rest of it, where you would change the word child to student.
Yep. I will make sure I scan all these documents to make sure that that term is updated.
Okay. There's one specific place in that last policy where you'd want to keep the word child. So I'll just warn you now when it scans it, because it's
Sure.
referring to the difference between child and adult. And so then you
Okay.
wouldn't. And then the only thing was, like a lettering numbering thing. 159, line 159 is, for some reason it went to like 1, 2 or ILJ. It should be IJK. Not sure what happened there. And then under, if you look at line 198, 5, development and review of safe school climate plan. It starts with A, and then it starts listing things under A. So those should be not B, C, D, E, but 1, 2, 3, 4, I believe. But the substance of this, I didn't have any issues with. Again, a lot of this was changing the definition that was Connecticut statute, which is why
Yeah.
when you read about what bullying, the definition of that was drastically changed, the definition, and that's Connecticut statute.
Yeah, and so I agree. For purposes of adoption, I don't have any problem with anything here because it's obviously just like the law changed.
Right.
We'd be adopting what the law has changed to require. What I do think we might benefit from doing, and maybe this is not really a policy committee, but rather a more of a curriculum and student success or student wellness committee discussion is, these are some wholesale changes, and these are not just little definitional changes with a distinction without a difference. There are some major differences here that I think we need to account for under the law. So this could actually fold in with a broader board review of school climate that we've been talking about for a while now. So I think this actually would serve as the impetus to require us to do that. But that's just commentary. That doesn't have to do with the actual physical changes that are being promoted by the law here.
Wendy, was this one that needed to be adopted in a timely fashion as well?
The Safe School Climate Plan,
Yes.
let me just see.
And does it need to be adopted with the 5131.911?
They do go hand in hand,
Yeah.
pretty much, because that policy does reference this policy.
I just think maybe like we should definitely, as a
Revisit.
policy committee, accept these changes and move them along. But
Okay.
maybe also add a recommendation from the policy committee for the board and for maybe kind of for the curriculum committee to take cognizance of these big changes and kind of pass it off officially.
I think one of the things that I wanted to talk to Dr. Cook about was, as we change our policies and the legal definitions of things change, I want to make sure that the individual schools are updating their handbooks so that they are consistent with our changes. And because I think that they're sort of lagging behind. And I know we discussed it last year about them updating their handbooks and student handbooks and manuals. And I just don't know who is really responsible for doing that, or so that's something that we can bring up, because I think you're right. The definitions change the meaning a lot. And so I think that needs to be reflected in the student handbooks. And then the other thing that, and Wendy, maybe you could ask for me, I did ask you and Dr. Cook about when these policies go into effect. I understand that, like, if there is a state statute, it's something that has a date in the policy built in, that it's effective on whatever date, that's when it's effective. But I could swear that I read recently in a policy that we looked at that policies that affect students don't take effect until the following year. And so I just wanted to.
I read that as well.
Well, when the state statute changes and they state in the language of the new law that it's effective immediately or as of January 1st or whatever, then that takes precedence. I think what we're talking about is absent an indication of an effective date. And
Right.
also, if you're just kind of changing something that you need students to take cognizance of, I think the default is it could begin the next year.
Right. Like if we change it of our own accord, not based on state statute, then the implementation would get pushed off until the following school year.
Unless we also have some reason and would state as of, May 1st of 2022 or something like that, like if it's something important that we need to change. And then we would presumably, it would filter down through the administration and go out to parents through messaging that, hey, there's this new rule. Take. But I really have to run. I apologize.
Okay.
So
Did you
thank
want to
guys.
say anything about the last two or no? The two new ones?
I already did. We need
Okay.
to make these changes that are recommended by Shipman and Goodwin because those are the law changes. But I
Right.
really think that the policy committee ought to maybe take a vote after I get off the call here. Maybe take a vote to refer, let's call it refer the new student climate statutes and new language to the curriculum and student success committee so that they can consider the impact of the law changes.
Okay. But nothing
Alright.
about 5121 or 5125R, the last two? Did you have anything to say about those before you go?
Same thing. They're wholesale definitional changes for school
Okay.
climate. So I would refer all of them to curriculum.
All right. Thanks, Seth.
Thank you, guys. Good job. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
All right, ladies, it's just us.
Oh,
They're
right.
they're dropping like flies. All right, so then I would recommend that we'll vote on it at the end, move 5131.911 and 5131.914 forward to the board for adoption.
Yes.
at the next meeting. All right, so now we're at item number 2, new policies for adoption. Policy 5121 is chemical health for student athletes. This is a chunky one. And the only question that I had on this one actually was, if you look at line 58 under item 6, professional employee, and Wendy, you're probably going to have to weigh in on this. Says means a person employed by a school who A, holds a certificate from the State Board of Ed, B, is a member of a faculty where certification is not required, C, is an administration officer of a school, or D, is a registered nurse employed by or assigned to a school. And this is Connecticut statute. And my question is, does it not include then like social workers or psychologists? Because they don't have a certificate from the State Board of Ed. They have a state license. They're not a member of a faculty where certification is not required because the licensure is required. They're not an administrative officer, and they're not a registered nurse. So I'm not really sure where they fall in there, but I would think that and I understand that that's a Connecticut general statute, but I'm just wondering, where they would fall in there, because you would think that if, with regards to this policy, if a student decides to voluntarily disclose their drug problem and they do it to a social worker or a psychologist, are they not considered a professional employee where it would remain confidential?
Well, and to that end as well, it's specifically talking about athletes, and the person they have the best access to after school hours outside of their coaches is the athletic trainer at the school. And again, that person is not included.
Right, they're licensed by the state, but they don't hold a certificate. They're not certified by the Board of Ed. So that
Right.
was the question that I had regarding this. And I don't think that we should hold it up from getting adopted because it's a Connecticut statute and we need to
Mhm.
have it. But I think that we might need to look into that and maybe amend it or change it. And I don't know if we should.
I don't have an answer for that, but I can certainly add it to the list of questions for Shipman.
And then would this be something that would, if we wait on it, then it's going to wait to go forward to the board for adoption? Is that something that we can do? Because this is a new one and it's required and we need it.
Yeah.
We can always amend it, right?
Yes.
And to go along with that, just the thing that's been missing in all of these, in my opinion, is we talk about controlled drugs and alcohol and paraphernalia, performance enhancing, but again, there's no mention of tobacco.
Yeah, we'll
Yeah.
get to the bottom of that tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
I'll go through and see what their recommendations are to see if it's
Right, the
somewhere
other-
else.
There was one other issue that I had with this particular policy. I'm just gonna look for my notes. Hold on. Okay, and it's line 51 under number 4, the performance enhancing substances.
Mm-hmm.
It's just a definition. And I'm not really sure if it's relevant here, but so it says means any anabolic steroid, hormone, or analog diuretic or other substance designed to enhance a student's performance in athletic competition, except when used under the care and direction of a licensed medical professional, and only then in the manner prescribed by the medical professional and manufacturer's recommendations. So my only pet peeve with that is the part that says and manufacturer's recommendations, only because, and I don't know if it would actually fall under performance enhancing substances, but there are many prescription medications that doctors write for that are considered off-label. They're not specifically what that drug got FDA approved for, but it is like commonly used for that particular diagnosis or treatment. So to say that it has to be manufacturer's recommendations, that means on label only, that I disagree with, because there are so many, it's really, it's the physicians, it's up to them what they're prescribing it for. And, they don't just write things willy-nilly. There's a lot of standard of care where things are written for something, but it's not necessarily what the FDA approved that medication for. So that would be the one thing that I had an issue with this particular one. But because it falls under the definition of performance enhancing substances, I don't know if it's valid there.
Okay.
Yeah,
I would agree with that, Diane. I know I've seen that in my family, so I think that that's important.
And I just,
It's not like this is the Olympics, so.
come on, they're Madison athletes.
Well, I'm thinking of the female figure skater who was prescribed a medication, but it's against the IOC for her to be taking that medication.
So other than that, I didn't find anything to take issue with under this particular policy. So I think pending, maybe Wendy, you could ask about those two things. And then pending what Shipman and Goodwin says, I don't know if we can actually vote to move this forward, but I think we could move to vote to move it forward as it stands. And if we need to make a revision, then later on we can. But I think because it's a new policy and we don't have a policy and we're required to have a policy, that as it stands now, it's still acceptable. That's just my personal opinion. You guys can weigh in.
And what would be the alternative? When would we be able to?
So what I said before, and I'm not sure if you were here for that, but because of the Board of Ed meetings and when we have our committee meetings, right now it's a 3-read, because these are either revised or new. We would not want to waive, the second and third readings. So these would have, anything that we vote on tonight would have a first read on March 1st at the Board of Ed meeting. The next Board of Ed meeting is a workshop style, and so it's not a regular business meeting, which means the next time it would go for a second read and action would be April 5th. And that would only be an action as long as the 9600 series, which is a third read that night, if that passes first, then they go into effect immediately. Then the series that we're looking at now, those would become a second read and an action item on April 5th. So if this is delayed tonight, then our next policy meeting is April 26th. And any policies there go for a first read May 10th with a second read and action on June 7th, which is the last Board of Ed business meeting for the year. So it's very tight. Really, the bulk of what we're going to do is this meeting and the next meeting, and then it pretty much finishes up for the year, except for things that must, get in. We're scheduled to have a policy meeting May 24th and June 21st. Most likely, I think the June 21st one gets canceled, but you really can't do a lot at the last policy meeting on May 24th because it will sit, until August, pretty much. So keeping that in mind, do we feel comfortable saying we can move 5121 forward? And I realize, I'm sorry that we're going over it. We're 6 minutes over already. So, and we still have the last regulation to go through, but we can be quick about it.
Yeah, I'm fine. I'm not.
Okay. So, do you guys feel comfortable with voting forward 5121 to be accepted as is. We'll get those answers from Shipman and Goodwin, and we can certainly discuss it before, when I give my report and it goes for the first read, we can certainly discuss it during that time and also before the vote.
Yes. Yeah, that sounds good to me.
And also any amendments that are made can be done after the first read. You can make an amendment at the Board of Ed meeting, and then it's voted in as an amendment, and then it's voted on with the amendment.
Okay.
That makes any sense.
Yeah, that makes sense. And that keeps us moving along and on track. So
When will we as a committee hear back on that answer? Will the answer come back to you, Diane?
Wendy will find out, and whenever Shipman and Goodwin get back to her, they're pretty fast about it, right, Wendy?
Yeah, they are. They're very quick.
And then
Unless the person I normally contact is out of the office, but then they even refer it to a different lawyer. So they're very good.
okay, so will we get an email with that information? We'll have it before the Board of Ed meeting, right? So we could discuss it?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect.
Well, we can't discuss it as a meeting,
Right. I know what you're saying.
but I can forward you the information that comes from Shipman and Goodwin so that you know what their answer is. And then at the Board of Ed meeting on 3/1, when it goes for the first read, I can mention the changes that they suggest or what they said about it. Wendy, does that sound right?
Yes, it does.
Okay.
I'm sorry, I was muted.
That's okay. So if
My
Shipman
dog
and
is
Goodwin,
barking.
if Shipman and Goodwin say, oh yeah, we can include social workers and athletic trainers or whatever, when it goes for a first read, since we've already voted it forward, do we say it's going to be amended, or how does that exactly work?
So in the past, there have been changes that have happened between a first and a second, and even a second and third read. So you would just point out the changes from one reading to another,
Okay.
whatever
As long
change
as our
that may
committee,
be.
as long as our committee has already agreed that if these changes can be made, we would put them in. Is that how it works?
Yes.
Okay. So we were just, so for 5121, we're worried about the exclusion of the social workers, psychologists, athletic trainers, those sort of professionals that might be, someone that a student would turn to.
Right.
Okay. And then, and I think that was that and the manufacturer's recommendation part in line 51.
Right. And
I think that could be, I'm sorry, that could probably be fixed by just using the word or. Because it says medical professional, and only then in the manner prescribed by the medical professional and or manufacturer's recommendations. I think if we could have Shipman and Goodwin okay the or, then I think we'd be good with it, right?
That sounds good, yes.
All right.
And then my only other thing with 5121 was the absence of mention of tobacco usage.
Tobacco, yep.
So I'm wondering if that's in a different policy that we just haven't gotten to.
That's
It
what I'm
probably-
wondering too, because there's so many here that are addressing other things, but not that.
Well, I will tell you, Shipman has already reviewed our entire 5,000 series, which is a big series, but we haven't even gotten there yet.
We're trying.
We're trying. So I would bet that there is a policy in that series where they've made a recommendation, and I'll take a look at their recommendations tomorrow and I'll let you know what they say.
Okay.
I can't imagine that they don't have a policy on tobacco use for students.
I think they've got a policy for everything.
Everything, yeah. So it's probably just something we haven't gotten to yet.
Okay. And if that's the case,
Before. I recall reading it. I don't know where it is right now.
I know there's so
been there.
many.
Yeah.
There's a lot.
All right. So, all right. So then I think with those two questions in mind, we'll recommend 5121 to move forward. So that leaves 5125R about immunizations. And I don't know, since this is another regulatory one, if maybe we should just not discuss this one tonight because Dr. Cook is not here, or if no one had any issues with it. This does not require a vote, right, Wendy?
Regulations do not require a vote, no. And I couldn't really tell you the reason why it's a regulation and not a policy, but I do know that it is mandatory.
All right, so we just need to okay it, I guess, or just say that like read it and we're good with it.
Yeah, I mean, if you have any issues with it, certainly we'll bring it to his attention, but it was just to show that it was something we need.
Yeah, I didn't have any problems with it.
Okay.
I was getting policy fatigue by the time we got to it.
Uh-huh. Yes.
Who
I
is
feel
the
same.
district designates, and it says insert name of responsible staff member. Who is, do you know who ours is? I would assume it's a nurse.
Would it
I
be
would
Stephanie?
assume, but because this is something we don't have yet,
Oh, maybe it's
I would have to ask him who he would like that to be.
okay. So just tell me, what do we do with these regulations? Do we vote on it in committee and that's it?
It's not, well, yeah, I guess you could vote on it as a committee, but it's not something where we actually put it through a first and second read like a
Right.
policy.
I'm just wondering because on the last page it says, line 181, adopted in a blank where it needs a date, and I'm like, well, is that
Yeah,
what
and that's, you know what, that's just the rush of copying their policy into our format to
Okay.
get it into your hands. Just like the formatting changes you were talking about.
okay.
It's, if I tried to reformat, say like the entire state school policy, 31 pages,
You need a vacation.
yeah,
All right,
you wouldn't have had it.
so I didn't have any problems with 5125R immunizations. Did you guys want to discuss anything about it?
No, I didn't have any problems with it.
Nope,
Okay.
I do not.
Wendy, do the regulatory, the regs, do they go to the whole board for them to read or no?
Not in my experience, no.
All right, so let me just grab this stuff. So we have policy 1150, prohibition against smoking, 4116, alcohol, tobacco, and drug-free workplace. We're going to table 5090.7 for now. We have 5113, student attendance, truancy, and chronic absenteeism. 5131.911, bullying prevention and intervention. 5131.914, the safe school climate policy, and the new policy 5121, chemical health for student athletes. So I need a motion to move these forward to the regular board for adoption.
So moved. Second.
Oh.
I'll
Maureen
let
gets
Maureen
it
get
first.
the so moved.
Again, it doesn't matter.
Okay, any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Okay. Passed. Okay, and then Wendy, do we have any members of the public? We don't have it on our agenda.
No, no one.
Okay, then I won't say anything about
I
it.
can't imagine why anyone's not interested in
I
policy.
know, I mean, we're all,
The most exciting committee in town.
Honestly, nobody believes me.
okay, so then 5113, the reg, and 5125, the reg, that was, I'm sorry, 5113 was the student attendance, truancy, and chronic absenteeism, and 5125 are the immunizations. We're all agreed with those, and so they don't need to be voted on. And we'll just let Dr. Cook know
Yes.
that it's all good. All right, well, thank you, ladies. Need a
Thank
motion to
you.
adjourn.
Thank
So-
you, everybody.
All right, and
Fingers
we're
crossed.
adjourned.
Okay,
6:45, that wasn't too bad. That's the longest one I've ever had, 6:45.
There were some lengthy ones there. I feel like we had the most discussion on
Yeah.
these policies out of any so far during our tenure.
It's definitely meaty. All right, thank you.